Hello, beautiful people. Welcome to yet another episode of A Courageous Journey. I am your host, Tintswalo. This is an incredible journey that we'll be traveling together. And like I said, the reason I started this podcast is mainly because I'm going through my own courageous journey right now through the experiences and the dynamics that I am experiencing. And now I want to share that with you. I want us to all go on a journey that we can all embark on together so that we can embody and encompass all that we need so we can heal, so we can thrive, so we can parent in the best way and learn aspects of self-love so that we can be able to begin cultivating all that we need in order for us to truly live as who we are meant to be in this world. Now, today's topic is actually a very interesting one, given the fact that last week was Mother's Day, right? I actually posted something on this about sacrifice. So what I'm calling today's topic is that sacrifice is not a badge of honor. You know, we are living in a culture that tells us that we constantly need to be sacrificing. When we think of sacrifice, when we look into sacrifice, what it truly is actually the act of self-betrayal. When we are in service, quote unquote, in service to others, we normally are in service in betrayal of ourselves and in betrayal of what we genuinely believe in. And when we do that, we automatically assume that the self-betrayal, and culture endorses it, we are taught that the more selfless we are, the more good we are. And I guess it also takes us back to childhood trauma, which is something I constantly speak to. Our childhood has taught us, we've been conditioned since childhood to believe that we need to relinquish our voices, our power, and to betray ourselves in order for people and, you know, the people that love us to see us, to validate us, or for us to prove that we are good to them. And I guess it makes sense because part of our childhood and part of our coping mechanism in our childhood meant that we had to betray ourselves because we had to get most of our needs met. We had to eat, we had to go to school. So in any way that we had to take away what we truly believed in, we always had to step into what we never wanted, mainly because our survival thrived on that. And I guess that's why we end up growing up as adults who are so confined to the stereotype of relinquishing our power, or rather being of service or sacrifice. And for me, there's always an underlying motive when it comes to sacrifice, mind you, right? One would argue that, no, I sacrifice for my kids because I want to give my kids the best. But when we truly actually dismantle that belief or that concept and we fully enter it and dissect it and understand what is the motive behind the sacrifice, we actually begin to see how sacrifice is an illusion that people use to escape a reality of their own fears. So many people will compensate, for instance, taking their kids to an expensive school, working their asses off to make sure that kid goes to that school. But truly, it's not genuinely a sacrifice for the kid to go to the grade school. It's a compensation for what was missing in their life as kids. They probably never had the opportunity to go to a grade school, and hence now their identity is mired to the image that is created when their kid goes to that school, and therefore they automatically assume that they are sacrificing for their kid. So sacrifice, honestly, is really selfish. It's not something that comes as a genuine aspect, and that's why in many cases it creates resentment. When the kids grow up and the kids aren't complying to what you as the parent thought they would be or do, you end up, I took this kid to good schools, this kid is now doing this, without actually understanding that they evolve into who and whatever they need to be, and they genuinely grow into life to do what they have to do. And because the sacrifice is so mired to the motive that we have for the child through the lens of the image it's creating about us, we then feel offended when the kid does not choose to comply to what we want based on what they are portraying outside, because that portrayal is normally wired to the value that we feel about ourselves. It's wired to the approval that the kid gets makes us as the parent feel good about ourselves. So the term sacrifice is normally used in a way that does not serve its true purpose. In many cases, we normally fall into the trap of actually using our kids to fill a void of something that is lacking in our own lives. Our kids end up taking on the sacrifice that we are now putting on them But what is truly being sacrificed is our inability to actually look at where we need to do the work, where we need to do the healing. And I think part of me bringing up this discussion is because to be honest, we are living in a generation where many of us are constantly hungry for approval, for praise, for validation, and for applause. And whatever it takes, we normally betray ourselves so much. We betray our morals, we betray our ethics in order for people to kind of see us, to hear us, to validate us. And like I keep saying, it's okay, because part of our childhood depended on us getting this approval through betraying ourselves. And now it's hardwired in our subconscious and in our unconscious mind that unconsciously we are repetitively disregarding how we feel, disregarding how we engage with others on a genuine, open level. And we see it as well in relationships. The romantic relationships we have normally don't serve our highest good because we are constantly betraying ourselves. And we feel the more we betray ourselves is the more our partner will see our worth, will see our value. But that is actually taking away from who we truly need to be. You know, most of us fear standing up to what we believe in because that means our partner will not approve. Most of us fear speaking or even going into a career that we fully feel we believe in, that we can thrive in, mainly because our partner disregards that career. So it also goes back to the last discussion I had about self-love. You know, we claim that we truly love ourselves, but we are constantly betraying ourselves. And we even create a bigger illusion by telling others, like our romantic partners, that we love them, yet we don't even love ourselves fully. Hence, we are betraying ourselves to be seen and chosen by them. But, you know, as I created this podcast, and the reason I'm bringing this up is because I want us to look at these aspects of ourselves that sit, you know, in desolation, wanting and craving connection and, you know, companionship. How are we actually subjugating ourselves to the need of approval and validation? How do we actually relinquish our power and take away what we truly believe in just for people to see us, for people to love us? And it's allowed, like I said, because part of our childhood required that from us. But now, how do we then consolidate that? How do we now regroup ourselves? How do we come back to listen to that inner voice that is fearless, that is courageous, and one that is ready to start just owning up to what they need to do in this world? Where does that journey begin? And I think this courageous journey is here to be a path. It's here to charter a path that will allow you to access those parts of you that are unhealed, that are scared, that are fearful, that are frightened. I think another element of this just brings in the narcissistic and egoic elements of how we then become empaths by excessively giving. You know, the more we excessively give is the more we feel like people become more dependent on us. So the giving or the sacrifice truly comes as a compensation to feel needed because we don't feel valued within ourselves. We give so much of ourselves assuming that it's really for the other, but when we truly look into it, we start to begin to see that that which we are giving is really because we are hiding the parts of ourselves that need to actually be, you know, fully empowered. Sacrifice is fear. Sacrifice is the split from the true self. Sacrifice is self-betrayal. It is the absence of self-love. When we can actually attune to ourselves and start loving ourselves, the things we genuinely do to others meet their emotional needs and meet them where they need to be in their life without any sacrifices, without any attachments to what we are doing and why it should be done in reciprocation to what we've done. When we actually give off ourselves genuinely from a higher level, there's no expectations. There's no backlash. There's no, I did that for him, that's why he's there. It's a genuine release of energy as a reflection of your own self-love. Self-love is what you do to others as a reflection of what is happening within you. It is an energy that is felt with you that you release to share with the other, with no attachments, with no obligations, with just the isness of your being and their being, witnessing them and allowing them to kind of attune to what you are giving in that moment. Sacrifice also comes in a form of trade. When we trade, there's an obligation. There is an attachment of when or why or it should be done back unto me. But when you are giving, giving is free. Giving is selfless. Giving has no attachments. It has no obligations. And I think we are living in a culture where it's so hard to give because we aren't even giving to ourselves. And that's why we struggle to attune to others and fully give to them without wanting anything back in return. So I think we need to now go back to who we truly are. So we can start analyzing these patterns that we are creating through the dynamics, either with our kids, with our parents, or with our partners. How are we constantly sacrificing ourselves in order to see others happy? How are we constantly denying ourselves what we need to do just to get approval? This actually allows us to see how we need to begin cultivating all that is missing in our lives that was obviously taken away from our childhood. Our childhood was really, really a time where we needed to thrive, but we couldn't. We needed to be nurtured, but we weren't. Parts of us got lost in our childhood. Parts of us got wounded in our childhood. And hence we are the adults we are now, who are constantly seeking stimulation, who are constantly seeking to feel like they've arrived. That's why we are so attached to the material aspects of life, because they give us a sense of, you've done well. They give us that congratulation that our childhood never gave us. So we are constantly looking for our mommy and daddy in things and people and in our kids, that we are so detached from that which is valuable within ourselves that we need to keep configurating all the time as we keep growing. And now we find ourselves sacrificing, betraying, and looking to find ourselves in things and in people. And I think, you guys are all at a time, all of us are right now at a time where we can start evaluating these relationships, how they impact us, and how we are constantly having to spread ourselves too thin, how we are people pleasing. And it's not a bad thing, trust me. I think our body and our mind copes through that. There becomes a dysfunction and a disharmony the moment we are not receiving, or rather secreting, these hormones that give us a rush of energy in the body. So the more we actually spread ourselves too thin, the more we actually seek out the validation, is the more we are secreting dopamine, the more we are secreting oxytocin. And these are all chemicals that are needed for the body to feel connected, to feel like they are in contact and in companionship with others, which are, basic essential needs for a human. And I think that's why we repetitively continue to put ourselves in these situations, because that is the only way we can get into that state where we are experiencing that rush of energy in our body. But it doesn't necessarily always need to be experienced through the betrayal of self. When we begin to honor ourselves and start doing the things that actually bring us joy, that make us feel whole, we start to recenter, and that recenter allows us to attune to ourselves, to start going after what we love, to start doing the things that our child has always wanted to do, that give us a rush of energy and adrenaline on a natural level, not where we are secreting all these hormones and chemicals through the exchange of self-betrayal and obligation from others. So now, how do we start beginning this process? The process begins when we start asking the questions and start to slowly identify how we actually put ourselves in these repeated patterns. I know for myself, I started looking at how I claim that I've made sacrifices for my kids by being a stay-at-home mom. But no, it's actually not a sacrifice. It's a compensation, because I haven't yet had the guts to go after what I want. But if I continue with that mindset, that'll make me resentful after years when my kids have left the home and I'm still not figuring out what I need to do with myself because I don't yet have the courage to go for it. This is a reality for many parents. Many of us are not truly sacrificing because we're sacrificing. The sacrifice has a fear underlying it. So start looking at these dynamics, start looking at your patterns and your habits, and ask yourself, where is the compensation for the sacrifice coming from? And why am I not able to not sacrifice, but fully attune to what needs to be attuned to, be it my kids, my parents, or my partner without having to betray myself? These are the questions we need to ask daily. These are the questions I've begun asking. The moment you start asking these questions, they liberate you. You start seeing that actually fear is all an illusion. It's false evidence appearing real. And it's false because you've made it familiar for all these years that you are now a refuge to fear. Anything that comes across as challenging reminds you of the times in childhood where you thought you'd fail and your parents made you feel bad for failing, and hence you don't even want to start with anything. Many of us have experienced that, and that's why many of us are so stagnant in life. Culture endorses it as well. Many of us are stuck and we believe it's okay to be stuck. We believe, oh, hey, TikTok is the way, or Instagram and, the slay queen life, whatever it is. But truly, what is trying to emerge from us is actually beyond us. But we need to enter ourselves. And entering ourselves means feeling the pain from childhood again. Because you now need to reacquaint yourself with your inner child. You need to go back to that child who was confused, who was hurt. The only way to truly access those parts of you that are unlimited and infinite is going within yourself. How do we begin that? It's through asking the questions. We all have information and knowledge and intuitive ways that we can actually access ourselves and bring forth what needs to be brought into the light. But we doubt ourselves so much because we were doubted in childhood. No one believed in us. But this is a time to start making the unfamiliar familiar. How do you start seeing yourself in the light that you are? How do you start scrapping out concepts of beauty that are out in culture? How do you start seeing yourself as someone who is whole and divine and worthy, who's capable of achieving anything? And when we start to actually access that part of us, of that inner voice, of that child within us, who is trying to truly connect with us as the adults, to help guide us and remind us of who we truly are, we actually are then able to fully align with what we've actually chosen to do in this world. We start to experience elements of joy now that are genuine. We start to create healthy relationships with those around us. And we start to have compassion for everyone. We start to understand that everyone is going through something. And we start to actually extend our compassion towards them. We start to see how our parents actually suffered as well. Because generational trauma, honestly, isn't something that's beginning with us. It's over a lineage of 5,000 years. So your parents did not treat you or raise you in an unconscious way on purpose. There's no fault. They too were victims of the childhood trauma that they inflicted on you. But what this healing and consolidating with our inner child does, it truly allows us to be more compassionate towards others. And that compassion allows us to start seeing people for who they truly is, for their being and their essence. We no longer see them as the identifications of that one with the car or that wealthy one or that poor one. The labels literally disappear. And we also start to see that we aren't the labels that we've put on ourselves. You're not the skinny, tall girl who is successful. You just are. And so is everything and everyone else. And I think part of this journey also allows us to start to fully encompass and embody that which we truly, truly came here to do. Now our talents emerge. Now our skills emerge. And now we spend our time and our days doing things that truly matter to us. We begin to do things that allow us to help others overcome what we've overcome. I mean, all of us are trying our hardest to overcome something. And all of us are all, victims of childhood trauma. And if you are able to take yourself out of there, then you start being the emblem for everyone else to also start seeing how it's done. So sacrifice is really not a badge of honor. It's not something you should wear. It's something you should never wear. At the moment, you're wearing it by default because it's unconscious and there are certain needs that you have that are putting you in situations where you betray yourself. But it can stop here now. Now is the time we start removing that badge of sacrifice and we start wearing our badge of attunement and alignment so we can reconnect with ourselves and have healthy relationships with the people that are in our lives. So we can begin, especially for me as a mother, to start raising my kids on a conscious level where I'm not giving as an expression of my lack, where I'm not raising them to believe that they need to live out certain aspects of my life that were not lived, through me or in my lifetime. I can't burden my kids with the things that I feel are lacking, which is all unconscious, which many parents are doing. But once I recoup myself again, I start to see how I'm actually traumatizing my kids and how I'm taking away what they've chosen to be and do in this world. We're all unique. We come here with a purpose. And, our purpose isn't something that's outside of us. Our purpose is something that is within us. And purpose is what you do in the moment. I used to think that purpose is something that is out there that I need to keep chasing, that I need to find and, unravel and uncover. But purpose is truly what you do in the moment. If you are engaging with people right now, you engage in a purposeful level that allows you to attune. That becomes your purpose. When you are changing your baby's diaper, you don't think of where you should be or how things should be. You bring yourself into the moment and you change it beautifully as you engage with the moment. That becomes your purpose. The more we engage with the moment on a moment-to-moment basis is when we truly in purpose. And that allows us to then monetize those things. If you're cooking, you cook in the moment. You engage with it. That's your purpose right there. Automatically, you come up with a recipe. That recipe booms. So our purpose is not something that's outside of us. And the more we can recoup ourselves, reacquaint ourselves with our inner child, is the more we allow ourselves to start living on a moment-to-moment basis, where we're no longer sacrificing, where we're no longer self-betraying, where we no longer are in, self-abnegation or abdication, where we are just living through an expression of the moment and accepting things as they are and fully engaging with them as they are. That brings joy, that brings equanimity, that allows us to fully share love, to be love and embody it in every instance of every single moment in our lives. And yes, this is, I guess, the end of a courageous journey with myself, Tintswalo. It's not a journey you need to travel on your own. I'm here. We will be walking it hand to hand, woman to woman, mother to mother, parent to parent, soul to soul, being to being. And I am here to travel it with you. Thank you. This podcast will be an accompaniment through the journey of inner liberation that will create new ways for a deep conscious connection with yourself and your children. Thank you so much for listening. I love you all.